And into the next life with Drew and me. Okay, here we are with special guest Ryan Scott Kilpatrick.
Woo, woo, woo.
Ryan, thank you very much for being on. And on the Drew and Me podcast, we talk about movies, we talk about TV, we talk about sketches, and then we talk about whatever else we want to talk about. Now, Ryan, you also have a podcast called Between Two Perms.
Correct. I do have a podcast called Between Two Perms, and we do something similar. We just talk about the week that was. We cover comedy, entertainment, political stories, hot topics, and just have a conversation. And we do it between two perms. So, just so you guys know that. That's an homage to Zach Galifianakis, Between Two Perms. We have a legal defense fund that we're putting together just in case we get sued.
Nice, dude. That's awesome. And you told me before the show that you have a comedy special that just came out.
I have a comedy special that I just came out with. We're setting the bar really, really, really low, and in today's comedy environment, it's titled "I'm Just Here to Get Canceled." I feel like cancel culture is like COVID. We're all going to get it, so just prepare for that. So, yeah, check that out.
All right. Nice. And where can we watch it?
I've got a YouTube channel, DJ Lowell. It's LO-L. My government name was LOL, but I changed that to Wakanda Name Maker. And it's DJ Lowell, LO-L on YouTube. And on my YouTube channel, you can find I'm Just Here to Get Canceled. It's about a 48 minute comedy special.
Okay. That's awesome, dude.
And if you don't like my ugly mug, you can hear it on my podcast, Between Two Perms. I put it on there as well, which is on Spotify, iTunes, all the major networks, major platforms, if you will.
Okay. That's awesome, Ryan. Yeah. So definitely check out Between Two Perms on Apple Music or Spotify or other places where you listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
I personally should really listen to more podcasts because it's just cool. And I feel it's
how long have you been doing your podcast?
A little over a year. And it is helpful to listen to what other people do because ideas and also just listening to podcasts I think builds like listening skills. Like
Sure.
if you can listen to something and do something simultaneously, then that's awesome. Like that's really great.
Let me ask you this: how many episodes have you put out there in your a little over a year of your experience doing podcasts?
I'm not sure. Probably roughly more than 20, maybe, or maybe like 20 to 30. I have other episodes that aren't out yet because it's kind of something that's just getting worked on, and there's some that need to be edited. So that's just kind of the process of making a show.
The reason I ask that is because on one hand, you walk down the street and everyone thinks everyone has a podcast.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
am a member of the National Podcast Association, a member in good standing, by the way. And nice. I found out that there's like 1.5 million different podcasts that are out there. But the thing that you find out is everyone wants to start it, but everyone doesn't know the work that it takes to make it successful. So people will start and then they'll just, hey, I'm no longer doing podcasts. I mean, what do you mean you're no longer doing podcasts? I mean, you put it out there to try to, I always want people to know people's intention when they put it out there. Is it to educate someone? Is it because you want to be famous? Is it to monetize? What is your objective to do that? Because a lot of people start it and then they stop. And then there's different ways you can go about it too. It's like, I'm working on a couple new projects where it's like, I'll do one shoot I'll do maybe 2 or 3 hours in one setting. and then drop little episodes at a time, versus Between Two Perms where it's like current events. So you don't want like stale news. But I have a project that I'll plug, and then I'll let less of me and more of you that I have. It's gonna be called Between Two Poops, and I'm gonna go to every restaurant in the city and ask them about their pooping experience. And I'm gonna do it Anthony Bourdain style. I mean, how great is the experience? I'm gonna give you 4 poops for this place, and then I'm just But that project I could shoot in like in 2 days and drop like 20 episodes. So it depends on what your approach is.
Gotcha. Uh, let's
I know
see.
that was a lot. That was a lot to unpack there.
No. Let's see. Um, that sounds cool, and I think a lot of restaurants in Philly would be down for that.
Who wouldn't be? You go in there. First of all, talking about poop is hilarious. That's number one. Number two, this is a serious thing. You just don't go to anywhere to have a poop, because there are some restaurants which they frown on men pooping in the bar. So that pooping experience isn't that pleasurable. So, and then promote the bar for the pooping experience.
Yeah. Let's see. I, g- I guess just make sure you get their permission first, before kind of like starting it.
So you're saying I would just go into Ruth Chris
Yes,
and
sir.
poop and go out and give them a bad rating and then put them on my podcast. Now that's not exactly how I would try to construct it. I appreciate you.
Oh man. Oh, so is it going to be your personal experiences using the bathroom at these various places?
Listen, I won't get into too many details because we're still ironing all of how what the format is going to be. But
Yeah.
it's gonna be me going there, like Anthony Bourdain, going to a restaurant and promoting the restaurant for this time. This restaurant's got a good cheese stick or a good foie gras or whatever. And for me, it's like this restaurant has a great pooping experience. If you're looking in Philadelphia, listen. Sometimes you go to restaurants. If it's Chipotle and it doesn't agree with your stomach, you need to poop. You need to know if you're in a good pooping environment. That's all I'm saying. It's important for people to understand this.
Okay. All right. Definitely let me know when that gets started. I'll I'll keep an eye out for it, or nose out for it. All right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
Let's see. So today's episode is actually about favorite Steve Martin movies and Blink-182 songs. Because both are great artists, and Blink-182 is amazing music, and Steve Martin is a really, really funny comedian. So Ryan, is just in no particular order, is there a Steve Martin movie that you really like?
Well, I want to say one thing first about Steve Martin, and
Yes, sir.
I like the fact that you said comedian, but you don't want to limit his talent. He's an actor, comedian, writer, producer, and a musician. As a comedian, I can
True,
appreciate
true.
that, but this guy is almost a potential threat for an EGOT. I think he's got an Emmy, he's got a Grammy, he has an honorary Oscars, and I think he was nominated or is looking for a Tony. I'm not sure. So this guy is multi-talented. When I say, do I have a favorite Steve Martin movie? When we first came up with this idea, the first Steve Martin movie I thought about was Three Amigos.
Hmm.
So I guess that default would have to be my favorite because I remember it. I've seen it.
Hmm.
And I was young at the time, but I saw it multiple times. And there was him, Martin Sheen, and there's Chevy Chase, right? Was the third one?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Let's see. Yeah.
they were all just funny guys. And then and then I get to see Steve Martin and wait, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, and Martin Sheen. Is that the other one? but he's working with him again in that show where everyone dies in a house or something like that.
Oh,
Um,
there are murders everywhere.
yes, only murders in the building. Only
Oh,
murders in the building.
gosh, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Martin Short, Steve Martin, they're working together again with Selena Gomez in Murders, Only Murders in the Building. So I
Oh,
guess Three
okay.
Amigos would be my favorite. But I do have to throw out a plug for my mailman who is just came out with a book and he's trying to create his own podcast. And he told me Blue Heaven, My Blue Heaven was a great movie that I haven't seen. So actually, because of this project today, I'm gonna actually go watch that a little bit later on. And I guess that he was in that one with Rick Moranis. And I have a
Yes,
joke
sir.
about it. You know Rick Moranis, right?
Oh, he's so funny. He like uh yeah, like him in Spaceballs is just like the
Yes,
most
yes.
hilarious thing on the planet.
It's so funny because I have a comedy bit where I go into Rick Moranis and I'm always like, "You guys don't know who Rick Moranis is?" Because like, and a lot of people don't. I mean, these millennials these days they don't know Honey I Shrunk the Kids, Honey I Blew Up the Kids. Everyone loves Spaceball, but yeah, so I have to check out that Blue Heaven one.
Yeah, I have to give it another chance. Uh I feel like it's kind of a different movie. It's kind of avant-garde. Like they're kind of going for kind of a little bit art house, and Steve Martin is playing like a different type of character, and he does like a different voice in the movie, which is really different from like he usually plays kind of versions of himself in movies. Um with the exception of the Jerk, which is like a pretty original character, but
Mm-hmm.
he does a really different voice in My Blue Heaven. So
Have you've seen it?
I've seen a little bit of it, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting. And I guess like just going into it, I just
So,
have to accept that he's doing a different kind of character. Yeah,
if I could jump in real quick, I'm perplexed here. You
sure.
saw a little bit of it. So
Yeah.
were you doing research, or were you young and it was on and you didn't watch all of it, or did you not
Um, it was
film?
do yeah. Um, it was doing research, and it was more. It seemed like like he was playing a really different kind of character, and it was more. I wasn't used to this type of like Steve Martin performance, so I kind of gave up on it just because I like his other stuff so much more. But once you get used to that he's playing a different type of character, I think it's probably fine. So if I watch it again, I
He was
think it'll
playing.
probably be okay.
From what I understand, he was playing a mobster who traded in for witness protection. And
Um,
Rance was his. I mean, again, I haven't seen this one. This it was brought today, and I mean, you've seen a little bit. I've seen a little less. I got to figure out. Hey, if you're trying to say maybe it was a serious role. Like so, if Eddie Murphy goes away from Professor Clumps and he tries to play a serious role, like Dreamgirls or whatever, sometimes people just don't. That's not the Eddie Murphy they're looking for. So I don't know if that's what the issue is, but I'll have to see it so I can actually weigh in to give a better analysis of it.
um, yeah. That sounds good, and I probably do need to give it another chance. Something that I've been meaning to do is watching some movies without the sound on because like sometimes that's a good way to experience a movie,
You know,
and it's
you know what's
also a good yeah,
what's fascinating about that? I
yes.
walked into our Michael's place, shout out in South Philly, 12 and Mifflin, and there was a guy that was sitting there. I think he was watching Predator, and he was watching it with no sound, and he was telling me that that's a strategic best way to watch. He's like, I don't need to hear the words. I can see how the movie is going, and that's interesting. But I will say this: when I did my special, I listened to it. We edited it. I did it a couple different ways. I just wanted to hear it, I wanted to hear it without me seeing myself because a lot of things that I'm doing, I'm animated, and then I wanted to see it without hearing the words to see everything, and then I wanted to put it together. So you saying watching a movie without the sound is fascinating. It's something that I want to look into as well.
Yeah, it can be a good way to learn. Like it really can, and just your eye will pick up on different things. I had a really good professor in college who recommended doing that for television just to see the rhetorical choices that directors and producers made and the editing. Like your eye will really notice editing. And that's a really good way to kind of get started with understanding um the cuts between shots and also kind of the pace and the speed. So just for like aspiring filmmakers, editors, and producers, watching stuff without the sound is a really great way to learn. So I totally agree with you, Ryan. Like that it can help or change the viewing experience.
And is that I don't understand? Is that your background? Are you a producer, editor, writer, or are you?
Um uh I'm kind of an aspiring educator, and I really like education. I was in grad school for early education and library science, and I really do want to be a teacher. So like learning about kind of different perspectives and um uh kind of the process of how we do things or how we make evaluations is like really important to me. So um uh and there are so many different ways to enjoy the film. Like the movie The Artist. Have you seen The Artist?
I have not.
It's
Oh,
very good, and there's music, but there's no dialogue.
interesting.
And it's really awesome, and the actors are like really emotive, and it's fun, and it takes you in. And maybe there's a little bit of dialogue, but it's kind of a commentary on how kind of the departure from the silent film into the talkies and the kind of music with like sound and music and how actors who got into the talkies really took off and with like sound and dialogue they got really popular, but there was an era before that. So it's kind of like the big transition from silent film to movies with sound and dialogue. So that's kind of really cool, and it's a really cool experience, and I think you'd really enjoy it. So definitely check out The Artist.
Well, I do remember,
Yes,
although
sir.
I'm a college dropout, but
Oh no. Oh, okay, okay.
I took a film class in college,
Yes,
and
sir.
there was, I don't know if it was Charlie Chaplin who was in it, but there was a movie where it was just like there was no dialogue. It was just a guy just walk. I don't know if he was chasing a balloon or what. Something weird. I remember, and again, I was a younger person at the time. I'm like, yeah, I don't really care for this. I didn't have conversations. I didn't see what's going on. Where this is going. But it's a good thing to challenge and stretch your imagination if you're sitting there and you know what you like and to go do a different way. Just it. I guess it's almost like if someone like if you let all your senses and if you lose sight, it forces you to lean on hearing and feeling more so you can know the overall experience. So if we want dialogue and we want to judge a movie based on a dialogue and based on the script, so now you put yourself in a situation to lend yourself on the other things that tickle the fancy and look at the producer's creativity in regard to that. So maybe I would have to use my eyes a little bit more. I don't know, but it gets you out of your realm of comfortness, I guess, and what you're looking for in film.
Yeah. And you'll notice indie and art house directors, they'll they'll have fun with camera angles and they'll mix up shots and things like that. And um that's something that you might pick up on before if you listen to it without the sound. But There's a great movie directed by Lubeski called The Favorite. Have you seen that?
I have not.
It's very good and it's so clean looking, and his choices with like how he like frames shots and like the different shots in the movie is excellent, and I highly recommend it. It's a little bit heavy and dark, so it's the type of movie, just make sure you're in a good mood when you watch it because it is kind of a downer, but it's it's excellently filmed and acted. And um it's interesting to see what types of the creative processes he really kind of dials in and focuses on. And getting back to what you were talking about sound, a lot of sound and sound effects come into the movie later. Like it's kind of separated from the film. Sometimes you'll hear dialogue on film, but the sound effects are put in later. So there are separate processes that go in. So it's interesting to see the different like thought processes that directors, editors, and producers have. Um uh so yeah, are there any, do you know of any silent films or movies um uh in addition to Charlie Chaplin, do you know to any movies that don't have sound or dialogue?
Not off the top of my head. I
Hmm.
couldn't because again, when I saw that one in college, it was just like I guess they're showing it to you to teach you, you know, the evolution of
uh,
film, but it wasn't my cup of tea at that time. But having this conversation with you, something that I would definitely revisit.
cool. Yeah, like it just depends if you know what to look for. And what kind of content you like watching. Um and maybe your familiarity. Um like um yeah, yeah, since um yeah, like I do really like indie avant-garde and that art house stuff, but usually if it's like American, because I'll definitely find that um if you look at like British movies, like the like the BAFTA awards, like their movies are like really different. There's a film called Rocks, I think, that looked really different. Just a lot of it's art house, a lot of it's avant-garde, but a lot of it's very subtle filmmaking and kind of more meditative, and kind of you have to look at it a really different way. So it's kind of really different kind of filmmaking. And I feel like British filmmaking has really made a cool crossover. So let's see, you picked Three Amigos for Steve Martin, which I think is a really good choice. It's very kind of sketch comedy. It's very kind of like Second City or SNL. It has that kind of feel to it. I haven't seen In Living Color. Would you recommend?
In Living Color.
Yep. In terms of like sketch comedy.
So you're not talking about Steve Martin when you say Living Color, right? We're talking Wins.
No, like Jim
You know,
Carrey or David Allen Greer.
yeah, um, yeah. About I grew up on that. I grew up on Living
Nice,
Color.
nice.
Um, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm not trying to be facetious or anything. Or do you have a stuttering problem?
A little bit. I have a little bit of a speech impediment.
Okay, the reason I'm going to say that is because I was watching Steve. I didn't know if you were just sitting there like you were trying to take a poop while you were
No,
having
no,
a
no, no.
what's going on. I'm like, who could I say between two poops? Now this guy's taking the poop. I don't know, but I watched Steve Harvey, and he said that he used to have a stuttering problem, and he said he brought a girl on his show, and it was fascinating about how you can overcome that. And then I know that people give President Biden a hard time because he has a stuttering problem. Well, he says he does, and sometimes it doesn't come out really well. And so people don't know the challenge of that. But then what Steve was coaching on was like so simple about how you can overcome that. And I was just I wasn't sure, but not to go off topic, but everything is any topic is on the table. That's basically what you told me.
Sure. No, and like I thought Three Amigos was such an interesting pick. That it made me think of like what kind of inspired the filmmakers to do it. And I feel like it kind of was SCTV or maybe In Living Color. Can you watch In Living Color on YouTube or is it available on streaming? Because I would like to take a
It's
look.
I still get it on. I mean, I've got Comcast, and I was watching a couple of shows
Nice.
recently. Yeah, you would still check it out. And the thing about Living Color is like so many people went on from there to be successes. David Allen Greer, Damon Wayans,
Nice.
well, Marlon Wayans wasn't on there, but Sean Wayans was the DJ on there. Jennifer Lopez, Jim Carrey, um, Rosie Perez. I mean, the list goes on of people who were on that.
Did not know that she was on In Living. That's so cool. That's so cool she was on there.
Who's that?
Nice. Uh Rosie Perez. Since she's excellent in Do the Right Thing and uh White Man Can't Jump is also a really good movie and she's good in that too.
Yeah.
Um it's awesome.
And the funny thing about that is, I realized recently that I think it was the third or fourth season, it was no longer none of the Wayans family were on the show because they had it, and I don't know how these things work. They had the show, let's say it was on ABC, and then they wanted to syndicate the show in the second season, whereas they were still trying to get it picked up. So they lost all their creative control. And by the time it was like the third or fourth season, it was their show, but other people were producing it and running it. And I think that that's similar too with the Scary Movie franchise. I think the Wayans brothers started the first one, and then all of a sudden they just um, sold it to other people.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. They don't really get enough credit for how good creatively and entrepreneurial they were. Like they did start like a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah,
um um uh yeah, I think a lot of their stuff would actually go over better today than it like I think they were definitely ahead of their time with a lot of their comedy. Uh a lot of it is fairly dark though. So like I'm 31, so I think watching it as a kid it was like a little bit too adult for me. um yeah, but I think watching it now I would come at it with a different appreciation and kind of understand that they are joking and it's humor. It's supposed to be it's a joke. So yeah. But when you're a kid, sometimes you don't know how to perceive things or things are like too adult. So no, definitely like Wayne's Brothers stuff is stuff I should give another shot. The Wayne's Brothers show I thought was good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I mean, John Wayne or Damon Wayans had, I think it was My Wife and Three Kids, a show he had,
That show
and then
was funny.
yeah, he had that, and then his son, which is named Damon Wayans as well, he had a show that's on. He's like one of the only sons of those Wayans that have continued on the family business, if you will.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Steve Martin, his father was an aspiring actor too, I believe.
I did not know that. Did you read the book? Did you read the Steve Martin book, Born Standing Up?
What's it called?
Oh, so it's called Born Standing Up, and it is so good. And it's about his upbringing and his inspirations, and he was very inspired by theater and vaudeville, and he wanted to be a magician.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I went back to saying, comedian Steve Martin. I mean, I always want to know what people want to be known as. I want to be known as when Ryan the content creator, because it gives you a title, but it doesn't limit what people will put you in a category as. And it's funny too because apparently, if you really look at his Wikipedia, it says Steve Martin retired from stand up in like 1980. And I've always said to people, whoever retires from stand up, and what does that mean? Does that mean you're not going to go, 30 shows a year where there's filling out a stadium? I mean, if you're a comedian, you're always going to be funny. I've met people who have been doing comedy for 10 years and it made over 10 years, they made about $10,000. And they said, well, now I'm retired. Well, I know a lot of comics who don't ever get paid. They go out to open mics every single week with the same jokes for the last 10 years. And if they're not retiring, why are you?
um, yeah, it's really kind of, it's, and for comedy, definitely, like, I think we do it because we love it. And what you're saying about the content, it's also just fun to be creative. It's fun to have as many different creative outlets as possible. And that's something I really find as I grow old. Just like I love learning and I love developing skills and I love learning new things and across different
You're,
mediums.
you're not
And podcasting is still relatively new. Like I feel like podcasting is only like 10 or 15 years old, or it's older than that, but it's still relatively new.
I agree. I agree.
And I feel like it's a really cool kind of mode of communication, and it's also kind of like modern radio in some senses, as in um it's kind of like a radio show that you'd see on like AM radio. It's similar, but you can do whatever you want with it. Podcast is really unlimited, so is AM radio. But the two kind of go hand in hand because there's always going to be radio and there's always going to be podcasts, which is great. And actually the transition to radio is good. We're running out of time, but quickly. All right. Are there like two Blink 182 songs that you really like?
All the small things was the number one. I mean, I guess that's the most popular one that I know. And second ones, I really haven't identified. Um, but all the small things for sure.
Nice. Good choice, and it has a really good riff that kind of is kind of consistent with the song, and it has a good tempo to it, and it's a very positive song. It's really, really positive. I think it's off Enemo's Estate, which is a really good album. I was listening to that today, and it's a very good upbeat album. Some of their albums later are a little bit heavier, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely a credit to Tom DeLonge, the lead singer, for he has an amazing falsetto and amazing high register with his voice. Like it's really something special. He has a really special voice. Um, Mark Hoppus is also a very talented guitar player. Matt Skiba was a new guitarist they brought on later. He's really good. And Travis Barker is one of the best drummers ever. If you listen to some of the later albums, you can hear some really, really intricate drum fills and some like really like impressive drums on some of like the later albums.
Stuff.
Do you have a favorite Blink album?
Um, I don't. You gave me these topics, and I wasn't. These weren't some topics that I was completely versed in. So, I apologize for your booker and your producer. I'll come up with better research next time you pick a subject.
um